Hi, today is Monday, March 13th, 2017. We have just entered the third week of Lent, and this is a Swede Speaks. Yesterday, there was an interview in Swedish TV with Alice Bah Kuhnke, who is the Swedish Minister for Culture and Democracy. She was interviewed because the previous interview in the same program was with a Swedish citizen. I think he was a Swedish citizen, at least. They didn't actually say that. Yeah, they didn't actually say that, but I suppose he was. They called him Malik. I think that was not his real name, and he had went down to the Middle East and joined the Islamic State. According to the interview with Malik, he never actually fought any battles for them. He was just there, and he didn't participate in any training, I think he said. This story sounds a little strange, but anyway, but he did tell about some things that were going on down there, and now he was back in Sweden, and he was worried about people who had been in the Islamic State and fought for them and who returned to Sweden. He thought they needed help, otherwise they might do terrible things. He said something along these lines. But first of all, I'm not buying his story. That's the first and the one important part of this. I don't buy Malik's story. I mean, I don't know if he was just there some kind of observer, or if he killed people, if he raped women, whatever. I have no idea. I'm very happy that I'm still drinking tea, though. But even though, what's more important here is I don't agree with his idea that these people who have been fighting foreign wars should get help. No, they shouldn't get help. They should be put behind locked doors in prison. And if they're not Swedish citizens, they should be deported for life. If they are Swedish citizens, but if they have dual citizenship, they should be stripped of their Swedish citizenship and be deported for life. If they are only Swedish citizens, okay, lock them in for the rest of their lives. Throw away the key. I mean, okay, this is I'm giving you the populist way of saying this, but that's my opinion. Lock them in and throw away the key. And I think Sweden could rent a prison place in some country which is cheaper than to have people locked up in Sweden, because that's costly. I mean, Norway is renting prison places in the Netherlands, so why couldn't Sweden? But I think Sweden should rent prison places in a country cheaper than the Netherlands, but I digress. Anyway, the interview with Malik, and then they also interviewed an imam in Gothenburg, and he said he was worried about this and so on. Yeah, maybe he was. Maybe. I'm not buying that either. I mean, the Islamic State. In what way is the Islamic State differing from what is stated clearly in the Quran and in the Hadiths, and if you follow Muhammad's own example? Could anyone point out to me in which way the Islamic State are un-Islamic if you follow the Quran, the Hadiths, and Muhammad's own example? Don't give me some we could interpret it another way talk, because I don't care about that. What did Muhammad think about these actions, or about similar actions? What did Muhammad do? And remember, he is the perfect person according to Islam. He is not supposed to be criticized. So, yeah, but anyway. But then, okay, let's go to the interview with Alice Bah Kuhnke, the Swedish Minister for Culture and Democracy. She had said, I think last summer, in that week that is held every year in Sweden at the island of Gotland, the Politicians' Week in Almedalen, or Palmedalen, as my friend the Furious Tory calls it. because the tradition started with Olof Palme, the man who really started the destruction of Sweden for real. I mean, the one who speeded up the process. It started way back with King Gustavus I, but Olof Palme really speeded up the process, and from him this tradition comes with the politicians' week in Almedalen at Gotland. But anyway, Alice Bah Kuhnke, who by the way belongs to the Swedish Green Party. And remember this, green parties are always crazy. Always. They don't know the difference between environmental issues and Islam. It seems like that at least. And in her speech in Almedalen last summer, she said that Sweden was in the forefront in fighting violent extremism. And that's interesting, because what is happening now is that Sweden has been Gothenburg has been the city in Europe with the highest number of IS warriors per capita. Isn't that interesting? This guy, by the way, I think he was from Gothenburg, or at least the imam they interviewed after they interviewed Malik, or the guy they called Malik. After that, they interviewed an imam, and he lived in one of the segregated areas in Gothenburg. Anyway, so when when they asked about this, she said, "No, we're not in the forefront at that specific area. We are like any other European country in that specific area." Yeah, she tried to twist it around. But hey, come on. Most of the violent extremism in Europe is Islamic. Yes, you're right. There are a few neo-Nazis out there. That's true. There are actually a few more coming these days. But still, it's the Islamic. I don't even like to call it extremism. How is it extreme? I mean, they love violence, yeah. I guess that's the extreme part. But so did Muhammad. Was Muhammad an extremist? Maybe. But you get my point. And I need to say something more about Alice Bah Kuhnke, because I really don't like her. Recently, or pretty recently, I mean, this has been for the last few months, there's been a debate in Sweden about fake news, not just in Sweden, but also in Sweden. There has been a debate about what people share on Facebook and on social media, and the things people write on their Facebook walls, etc. And that Facebook should censor some content. Right? I don't think they used that word, but that's what they wanted. They wanted Facebook to make sure that no fake news was spread. What is fake news? I mean, before we had social media, and before we had alternative media, we had the mainstream media. They could push any lies they wanted to, and no one could really combat them on that. I mean, what could happen would, of course, be if the government controlled media would say one thing, and the big business media would say another thing. But in practice, they were more or less in agreement in the media. And now we are seeing the rise of alternative media, of social media, and of course there is fake news on this side too. Everything, all the information I get, I have to look at it, and I have to compare it with other sources and reason around, is this true, or is this likely? Is this something that I should believe in? But you have to do that with the mainstream media too. I mean, you probably have to do it. But anyway, the point is that this was a proposition that came from a Swedish comedian called Jonas Gardell. And maybe he was funny once, he's not funny now. And Alice Bah Kuhnke thought this was a good idea. And the biggest party in the Swedish government, the Social Democrats, she is not a Social Democrat, she is from the Green Party, but the Social Democrats, the leadership of that party has written a proposition for this party's party meeting that will be held soon, I think. So, yeah, Sweden could be moving into 1984 even more than it already is. So we need to look closely at what's going on in Sweden too. Also, I would like to point out this. They also mentioned to Alice Bah Kuhnke about these Turkish politicians coming to Sweden, and they're campaigning for President Erdogan's proposition, which more or less is a proposition to give him even more dictatorial powers. And she started talking about the freedom of speech. Yeah, and now she believes in freedom of speech. What could you say? I mean, seriously, this is one of the many reasons why I do not support dual citizenships. Because I mean, this is destabilizing Sweden, destabilizing Europe, and destabilizing the West. And you shouldn't allow any Turkish politicians into Sweden to have Turkish political campaigns. No, let them campaign in Turkey, not in Sweden. And if Alice Bah Kuhnke doesn't understand that, she should resign. But so should the entire Swedish government. And yeah, there's all the things that should be done in Sweden. This annoys me a lot. And that's what I have to say about this right now. I would like to thank the people who are supporting this channel through PayPal, through Patreon, through prayers. That is very, very appreciated. I would also like to say that if you like this channel, please subscribe to it so you don't miss anything. Please like my videos if you like them. If you got something to say, please comment. I read all comments, even the nasty ones, and I answer on as many as I can. And I would also like to encourage you to support this channel. That can be done through PayPal, it can be done through Patreon, and I will include all the necessary information in the box below. This is A Swede Speaks. Have a nice day.